The big guy, Mr. 10%, your president, Joe Biden, was in Southeast Asia, made a stop in Vietnam. And he's so good off the cuff. He's just so good off the cuff.
God.
Remember the famous song, Good Morning Vietnam? Well, good evening, Vietnam.
Rim shot.
I don't remember the famous song, Good Morning Vietnam. I remember the movie with Robin Williams.
Right.
Movie.
I don't remember a song.
Mm-hmm. And he gave like a 20-minute presser.
That was odd. It was rambling, and it was rather frightening coming from the leader of the free world.
So good off the cuff. I mean, he just commands the audience's attention until he gets tired and he wants to go to bed.
The light let's see. I'm just following my orders here.
Who are these people who order the president?
Have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
Okay, I guess good night, Joe Biden. Good evening, Hanoi, and good night or good evening.
Put yourself
Vietnam.
in the place
night,
of the
Joe.
frontline colonels and others who have to make decisions, and lives of troops are at stake. And
Can I say one thing though about this, because I know everybody goes immediately to sort of the doddering old man.
it might be a dodge. I'm going to be indicted, so I want to protect myself.
Oh, he's doing the gigante. He's going to
Right.
start walking around
Chin.
in robes and pretending he's doesn't
Joey
know
the
where he
Chin.
is. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Maybe, but there's something else too, because he did this the other day with the mask thing. He did this thing he does. I just want to.
Who's breathing on the 80-year-old man?
No, but I want to address this because it's a little. I think it's more nuanced than just doddering old man.
Lord, buddy. I'm explaining to the press. I've been tested again today. I'm clear across the board. But they keep telling me because this has to be 10 days or something, I got to keep wearing it. But don't tell them I didn't have it on when I walked in.
This thing he does where he's like, don't tell them, my handlers, I'm just following orders here. That's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. And the way that he does this, I mean, first of all, he's just not a particularly intelligent or particularly intellectually curious guy. He wasn't when he was 29. He wasn't when he's 79. He still isn't. Okay, so that's just your baseline. But this thing that he does where he tries to, be self-effacing, I'm just here to follow orders.
Right,
Don't tell on me.
Right.
That
I'm
is
just the president.
Yeah, that's him saying, I do my own thing. It's like I'm still in charge. It's like I'm supposed to read this, or they don't tell them I did that.
Yeah.
That's just his way of trying to separate himself from all these handlers around me. But don't worry, I'm really in charge. That's really what that is.
Tell me when. All I need to know from Biden is when did Obama realize and let him take bribes from the oligarchs to put us closer and closer to nuclear war?
All right.
That's the only thing that I care about.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to bed rather than answer that question.
Right.
Dakota Wood served America for 2 decades in the Marine Corps. He's senior research fellow for the defense programs at the Heritage Foundation. He joins us now. Dakota, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, appreciate that. Yeah, those clips, that reminds me of just Churchill, right? Leading the...
Yes, very Churchillian.
Wait, I thought that was applied to the Ukrainian, right?
Yeah.
The president.
Yeah.
Ukrainian president smokes cigars. That's what my brother said. He smokes cigars like Churchill.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No?
I don't think we have any Churchills wandering around as heads of state at the present time.
Or Margaret Thatcher's or Pope Paul II or any of those folks. Yeah.
No. But boy, that important trip to Southeast Asia, I guess, sort of.
Yeah.
What was the point again?
It's supposed to be the annual meeting of the top 20 industrialized countries.
Yeah.
One of those 20 is the European Union. They've introduced a new member, the African Union, so a collective of 50 some odd countries there. So I don't know if they'll call it the G21 now or not, but it's supposed to be.
Well, they could keep it the G20 because China's not coming anymore.
Well, or Russia, they sent some low-level emissaries, but the heads of state did not show up. And the mess out of this big summit was they had a collective statement saying, hey, using military force to change boundaries is bad, but they didn't make any mention of Russia invading Ukraine. So their Foreign Minister Lavrov, hails it as a great victory for Russia. That since all these major industrialized countries didn't take Russia to task by name, well, clearly, Russia is calling the shots, even though they weren't there as a head of state, attendee.
I want to talk a little bit about the CCP here, because and how they insinuate themselves at the state and local level too. We're always talking macro level. We're talking at the sort of institutional level with respect to colleges and the Confucius Institutes. But we have an example here in Illinois. It was dug up by Jeannie Ives over at Breakthrough Ideas. Jeannie Ives, West Point grad. Governor Pritzker, he's the governor of Illinois, unfortunately. One of the plants that he has cut a deal with, he's of course a huge backdoor Green New Deal guy. And tries to get Podesta's money down to the state level, like all these blue states are doing. Chinese Communist Party apparatchik Chen Li inked and the state of Illinois inked a deal on Friday that will bring a $2 billion EV battery assembly plant to Manteno, which was an old Kmart distro center. The incentive, according to Crane's Business, $125 million up front and an additional waiver of employee income tax for a total deal $536 million. Oh, $2 billion EV plant assembly. Oh, by the way, there's $500 million in tax incentives. The local property tax will be frozen at $2 million for decades, too, which is double its current tax. Anyway, this Chen Li is a member of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which is a political advisory group to the PRC and an important part of the CCP. And here we have this another example where you have this money being thrown around at the federal level, and then from the feds to the states in places like Illinois, and then these Marxists at the local level, the state level, cutting these deals like this one with a principal who is a member of the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that it would seem to me is a problem. We're all talking right now about how we rely too much on China overseas for our the ingredients to our pharmaceutical drugs and the precious metals for our phones and semiconductors and so on and so forth. And here we're bringing them home and we're still relying on them.
Yeah, there's this issue, I think it's in California, or it's actually by the administration regulations that will affect the trucking industry, saying that X number percentage have to go all electric by certain dates and want to phase out use of diesel and over-the-road trucks. And this trucker was asked about it, and he said, look, when we put in 200 gallons of fuel, we can go, a couple thousand miles without stopping. And as you're driving, each gallon you burn reduces the truck's weight by, 8 pounds a gallon or something like that, right? So you get more and more efficient, relatively speaking, as you go on. You put a battery in the vehicle, and the battery's weight stays the same forever. So you're using up the electricity in there, but the battery itself remains heavy, and you can only go a fifth of the distance. You have to stop every couple hundred miles to recharge itself. And the reason I bring up that odd example is it relates to what you're talking about. This allure of battery technologies comes with a huge amount of costs that aren't discussed. And yet what's the driver? It's money. And the politicians think that the money that comes along with these sorts of initiatives are going to convince voters that this is a great thing and it'll keep them in office. So what all of this comes down to in Illinois and elsewhere is the average American citizen. What are we willing to tolerate? If we want government ties and business ties to communist China, because you get a nickel off of whatever it is you're buying at the store, then we'll have again the creeping taking over of the United States by the Communist Party in Beijing. So I know a lot of Americans, and my wife and I try to do this. When you go out to the store to buy something, it's made in America, or it's going to be made in China, or someplace else. Are you willing to spend a little bit more money to buy something that might be a bit more expensive, to prevent us sending our money to the Chinese Communist Party. So these deals with battery plants, assembly plants, and all the other things that come out of that country, any dollar you spend on that, even if it's tax subsidies or it's providing a job for an American here, all that wealth goes back to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a story last week. Chinese gatecrashers at U.S. bases spark espionage concerns. Washington has tracked 100 incidents involving Chinese nationals trying to access American military and other installations. And it's, Chinese Americans or naturalized citizens, fine. People that check out in terms of not being affiliated with the Communist Party. But you have principles of the Communist Party that are principles of business operations that are adjacent to technological, technologies that are adjacent to our national security, and they're just like, oh, let's subsidize them with taxpayer dollars.
And the government's holding their hand.
Yeah, how many stories can you recall where Americans abroad, as tourists, wandered into, a German military base,
right,
or a Chinese Communist Party, Air Force base? Oh, we lost our way, and we just happen to have our cameras and electronic devices and stuff with them, right? So, I mean, this whole idea of Chinese nationals in boats approaching launch facilities around Cape Canaveral, or wandering or trying to, crash through a gate.
Oh, is this Cape Canaveral? I was looking for Disney World. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Right.
It's Space Mountain,
Yeah, right. I wanted to, and we were just talking about this, John and I were at the end of the last hour because of this story in the New York Post about this TWA pilot that I don't think many people knew about, that had dodged 2 of the flights that went down on 9/11 and safely landed in Dayton, Ohio. And there's just not much known about him, even his last name. Don't really know who he is. But anyway, I understand that you participated in the planning and execution of operations around the world, including Operation Enduring Freedom, in response, to the preparation to the response to the attacks, the terrorist attacks on 9/11, and just wanted to get your reflections as somebody who served our country in the Marine Corps and served in that position as we remember 9/11.
Yeah, timing is everything on those things. So this airline pilot, right, who by scheduling, just wasn't on those planes or flying the planes, and however that all worked out. I mean, in the spring of 2001, I was actually attending a conference in Windows on the World, the top floor of World Trade Center 1, 6 months before. And I was assigned at that time to an office in the Pentagon, and it was on the side of the building hit by the plane. But what happened was I was reassigned to another office, and both of these were think tank things. So my other office was a small group of guys that supported the Secretary of Defense. And that morning on 9/11, it was right across the other side of the Pentagon. That morning on 9/11, I had left the building with our director, who was 80 years old, to attend a meeting in downtown D.C. And during that meeting that morning, it was interrupted. We were evacuated from the building, and you looked across the city and smoke rising from the Pentagon. So, I walked him home. He lived over near the Watergate complex, and then I had to walk out of the city with 100,000 of my best friends. And a couple of days later, able to get back into the building, and then it was all on war planning. So I assisted on the Marine Corps side for several days, and then was directed to go to U.S. Central Command, headquarters at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida, and was one of the lead logistics planners for our operations into Afghanistan. So, it's kind of, you can't plan these things, right? Sometimes it's just timing, and you find yourself in a position, and then, how do you respond to that position, right? And all of us were someplace on that day, and you probably remember, did you know somebody in New York or in Washington, D.C., or for what it was, a week or more, there were no commercial air flights, airplanes flying in the skies, over the United States. And, living here in Northern Virginia and working in D.C., you'd look up and the only planes flying were F-15s armed with air-to-air missiles, and armored vehicles protecting all the entry waypoints into Washington, D.C. with mounted machine guns and whatnot. So it was a very bizarre period of time, and, it was nice to be able to be into a position to help the U.S. response against these terrorists.
That you had something to do, that you could actually do something.
Yeah, that's a
So
good
many of
point.
us.
I mean,
So
a lot of
many of
folks.
us.
Yeah, I mean, you had people who would bring, baked goods to local fire, departments and police stations. People
They need
were
something.
wanting to do something to help their country because we love the country and we had been attacked, and people wanting to roll up their sleeves. So, myself and colleagues in the military, you could actually do something to strike back at these SOBs, and so it was, felt good to be able to do that.
Dakota Wood served America for 2 decades in the Marine Corps, as he was describing. Senior Research Fellow for Defense Programs at the Heritage Foundation now. Thanks as always, Dakota.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Dennis Prager. Sign up today for an unforgettable experience in Israel this October. Mike Gallagher and I are traveling to the Holy Land on the Stand with Israel tour with our trusted partner, Inspiration Cruises and Tours. This trip of a lifetime to Israel is one